What's this? Tastes awful. If I eat this, I'll feel sick. Megan chuckled, poking fun at the dish I made. I had tried it earlier and it seemed fine to me. Megan was just being picky. Andy and I had spent 3 days getting ready for this dinner. We were thrilled when we heard that our eldest son and his wife were coming over. Looking back, Andy and I felt silly for getting our hopes up. Megan's rude behavior and Benny just going along with her wore us out. We felt distant from them. Keeping a relationship with Megan felt impossible. Maybe we need to set some clear rules with her before I talk to Megan about it. Andy reached for the dish. I'm Katie, a 70-something homemaker living with Andy. We have a son, Benny. He graduated from a fancy college, got a job in a big company, and moved to Boston. 2 years back, he said he was getting hitched. The girl he introduced as his fiancée seemed nice. Benny said after the wedding, they'd move closer to us and wanted to bond, especially Megan. We were cool with it, but wondered about Megan. Benny assured us she was thrilled and wanted to get close to us. So we were on board with their plan. Around 2 months after tying the knot, Benny and Megan stuck to their word and relocated close to us. We were looking forward to bonding with Benny and getting to know Megan better, but reality hit us hard. Benny switched from his main office to a branch in our town, thinking it'd work out fine, but life wasn't as easy. The issue was Megan's spending habits. Even when Benny was earning well at headquarters, Megan had a habit of overspending. And when Benny's paycheck took a slight hit after the transfer, Megan's spending didn't slow down. It actually got worse. No matter how much Benny brought in, Megan used up most of it, leaving them in a tough spot. Ben was never one to fuss over his looks and lived a simple life. Benny was always hustling to earn more and rarely had time to visit us. Megan wasn't around much either, making their move nearby seem pointless. Even though they were close by, we hardly ever saw them. Benny was always caught up in work, and we were hesitant to directly reach out to Megan. It felt heartbreaking knowing Benny was going through a tough time. Despite his struggles, we tried to help by sending them $1,000 every month. We wished we could give more, but with Andy retired and us living on a pension, it was all we could manage. Every time we sent money, Benny would express his gratitude, but his voice sounded weary, which pained us deeply. We wanted to support him as his parents, so we decided to help in any small way we could. On our days off, we'd spend time with him, take him shopping, and treat him to a meal. When Benny and Megan were away, we cleaned their house for them. We knew these gestures couldn't solve all of Benny's problems, but doing something felt better than doing nothing. 2 years went by, and Benny's situation didn't improve. Seeing him struggle, we felt compelled to do something. We came up with a plan to invite Benny and Megan over for a meal. Knowing Megan might not accept a simple dinner invitation, we decided to go all out and prepare a lavish feast to tempt them. When I suggested this to Andy, he hesitated because he wasn't confident in his cooking skills, but he took the initiative and even went out to buy the ingredients. To our delight, the promise of a feast did the trick, and both Benny and Megan agreed to come over for 3 days and nights. Andy and I busied ourselves with preparing the meal while Benny and Megan showed up at our doorstep in the afternoon. They appeared to unwind, shedding the stresses of their daily lives. Benny seemed particularly worn out, prompting us to offer him our bedroom to rest. As Benny headed off to rest, Megan, seemingly unaware of our cooking efforts, lounged on the sofa, engrossed in the TV. Suddenly, she strolled into the kitchen and bluntly questioned, "Why are you putting in so much effort?" Taken aback by her abrupt inquiry, we were unable to respond before she continued, "Seriously, what's the point? Are you enjoying this? If you have spare time, why not find work and make some money? Retirement must be tough, huh?" Her mocking laughter filled the room. I stepped forward. "Isn't it impolite to speak like that when you're invited for a meal? Where's your respect for your in-laws?" A little decency wouldn't hurt. Megan's face flushed red. "Are you trying to pick a fight with me? Do you think your words don't sting?" I had no intention of starting a confrontation. I simply wanted her to exhibit basic manners. However, seeing her twist my words and become defensive left me speechless. Megan, apparently satisfied with her outburst, returned to the living room. Andy looked dismayed, but we had dinner preparations to focus on, so we tried to regroup. Suddenly, from the hallway, we heard Megan's voice escalating. "Why are you always against me? Can't you support me just once? I'm your wife." Alarmed, we hurried out to see what was going on. Megan stood by the bedroom door, and Benny, who should have been resting, was there too. "Why won't you stand by me? Why are you siding with your parents?" Megan shouted, clutching Benny's shirt. Sensing the situation spiraling out of control, we intervened. "Let's calm down. What's happening here?" Andy held Megan back while I approached Benny to understand what was going on. Weary, Benny recounted what had occurred. He had been trying to get some rest in the bedroom after a long day at work, but was startled awake by a slamming door. Upon investigating, he found Megan in a state of fury. She vented about feeling harassed and labeled me as the problem. Benny was bewildered and overwhelmed. In her heightened emotions, Megan misinterpreted Benny's silence as taking our side, and she began questioning his loyalty as her husband. Benny, still groggy from sleep, struggled to comprehend the situation and felt powerless. Megan's anger only escalated upon seeing Benny's confusion, leaving him caught in the middle and visibly drained. I confronted Megan, saying, "It's not okay to wake up and yell at your exhausted husband. Do you understand how strange you're acting?" Megan, perhaps feeling trapped, mumbled a half-hearted apology, but her eyes showed no remorse. Despite the tension, we gathered around the table for dinner. We had prepared ribeye steaks and fresh seafood from the local market, trying to offer the best. Benny seemed to appreciate it, but Megan, glancing at the spread, made a sarcastic remark. "Just because you serve this doesn't mean I'll overlook the harassment." It was disheartening to hear after all our efforts. Benny tried to lighten the mood with different topics, but Megan shut down each attempt with icy comments. I told her, "You need to change your attitude," but she simply ignored me. The TV was off, so I knew she heard me. Honestly, I felt dejected realizing that she deliberately ignored me. Feeling discouraged, Andy tried to comfort me. We managed to say grace before the meal, but after Megan tasted a dish, she exclaimed, "What's this disgusting mess? I'll get sick from eating this." She laughed mockingly, leaving me speechless at her cruelty. But she didn't stop there. "You're deliberately trying to make me sick with this food, aren't you? Going to such extremes just to torment me. You're truly wicked, mother-in-law." Her words dripped with disdain, causing my hands to tremble with anger. Why must we endure this? How can Megan treat others so cruelly? Seeing Benny so exhausted, why doesn't she feel any inclination to help? Why does she brush off our kindness? I had so much I wanted to express to Megan, but the right words eluded me. However, I couldn't let her behavior continue unchecked. Sensing my frustration, Andy reached for his plate. I've remained silent until now, but I've reached my limit. Andy's usually calm demeanor transformed into something intimidating when he was angry. It had been a long time since I'd seen him so upset. With his anger still simmering, Andy declared, "I'm severing ties with you. Leave immediately." Andy's voice boomed as he confronted Megan. Even Megan appeared startled, her face paling. "What's this, father-in-law? How could you say such things to your daughter-in-law? Do you find joy in causing trouble? I never imagined you, father-in-law, would stoop so low," she shot back, tears welling in her eyes. But despite Megan's protests, Andy stood firm. "I don't care if you call it harassment. I can't consider you family anymore. Leave." Andy's words made Megan realize the severity of the situation. "Fine, I'll go. From now on, I want nothing to do with you or mother-in-law. You'll regret this," she declared, packing her belongings and departing. I asked Benny if he wanted to go after her, but he seemed resigned. "It doesn't matter," he muttered, focusing on his meal. So we opted to let her go, fearing another confrontation if Benny followed her home. We decided he would stay the night. Benny appeared relieved, preferring not to face Megan at that moment. For the first time in ages, we enjoyed some genuine family time. We swapped stories, aired grievances about Megan, and even camped out in the living room, reminiscing about old times. The cramped couch reminded me how much Benny had grown. However, our peace was short-lived. The next morning, the doorbell rang, jolting us awake. As anticipated, it was Megan. Scanning the room, I confirmed it was indeed Megan at the door. As Benny, Andy, and I debated our next move, the door was pounded loudly. "Mother-in-law, I know you're in there. Where's Benny?" "He's here, isn't he? Let him out." Megan's words filled me with dread. Handing Benny over to her now could only make things worse. So we agreed to let Megan in and have a conversation. As soon as the door opened, Megan barged in, fixing me with a hostile glare. "You think you can steal someone's husband? That's outrageous," she yelled, her anger palpable. But her accusations no longer affected me. "That's a harsh way to put it. We simply offer him a place to stay because of the way you've been treating him. He made the choice, not me. Blaming me is unfair, don't you think?" Megan's face blushed crimson. "You're the worst mother-in-law and father-in-law for allowing this behavior. Stay away from us forever." Her words held no sway over us. Andy and I were prepared to sever ties with Megan. Tension hung thick in the air until Benny's words changed everything. "I can't do this anymore. Let's get a divorce." Benny's words stunned Megan, her face still flushed with anger. "Divorce? Seriously? You're choosing your parents over me?" Her tone softened, and she pleaded with Benny, her eyes filled with desperation. But Benny stood firm. "A wife who neglects her responsibilities and parties constantly versus my parents, who've always been there for me. The choice is obvious." Megan, still unconvinced, argued, "They're just manipulating you. Once they have you, they'll abandon you too." Faceless accusations. We never abandoned Benny, but Megan, eager to portray us as villains, hysterically shouted, "You're trying to take Benny away from me. Do you hate me that much?" At this point, it was unclear how to calm her down. Then, unexpectedly, Benny slapped Megan across the face. The room fell silent, shocked. Megan struggled to comprehend what had just happened. "You've not only been a burden to me, but also to my parents. Aren't you ashamed? I hoped you'd come to your senses, but I was wrong. Please don't say such things. I love you, please reconsider. My decision is final. From now on, we're strangers. Don't ever call yourself my wife again." Megan looked defeated. No one reached out to her. Eventually, she left, realizing there was no point in arguing. In the following days, Benny stayed with us as he initiated the divorce proceedings, which were recently finalized. Megan was hesitant to sign the papers, so they had to involve lawyers. Fortunately, Benny had evidence of Megan's extravagant spending habits, which helped him secure the divorce. He also sought compensation in court. Due to his deteriorating health from stress and overwork, Benny was unfortunately diagnosed with a lifestyle-related illness. Megan's parents eventually paid the settlement, leaving Benny indebted to them. Megan now works tirelessly day and night to repay them. After the divorce, Benny continued to reside with us for some time. We wanted to give him a reprieve, especially considering all he had endured. Today, Benny has regained his footing and is working diligently as ever. While life may present him with more challenges, we will always be there for him as his parents, offering our unwavering support in every possible way.
The cathedral doors slammed shut in my face with a finality that echoed through my bones. Through the stained glass, I could see the warm glow of candles surrounding Richard's casket while I stood in the February cold, locked out of my own husband's funeral. Staff enters through the back. Christopher had announced loudly, his hand firmly against the door, ensuring everyone inside heard him reduce me to hired help. "This is for family only." 20 years of marriage, 20 years of raising him and his brother Daniel from angry teenagers to grown men. And this was my reward, standing on the church steps in my black dress while snow began to fall on the roses I'd brought. Roses from Richard's garden, the one we planted together our first spring as husband and wife. Behind Christopher, Daniel smirked, already checking his phone for the wire transfer he expected from his father's accounts. "Dad would want it this way," he added, loud enough for the arriving guests to hear. "Blood family only." I could have fought, could have made a scene that would have had every society page in Hartford buzzing. Instead, I turned and walked back to my car, my heels clicking against the icy pavement with quiet dignity. Let them have their moment of cruelty. They had no idea what was waiting. My name is Margaret Hayes, formerly Margaret Hayes Winters, and I'd spent 2 decades being called the gold digger by my stepsons despite never taking a penny I didn't earn. Today, they were about to learn their father had been watching their treatment of me all along. In my Mercedes, parked strategically where I could see both the church entrance and the cemetery gates, Attorney William Brennan sat reviewing documents one final time. "Are you certain you want to do this today?" he asked gently. "We could wait." "They locked me out of this funeral, William," I said, my voice steady despite the tears freezing on my cheeks. "Richard predicted this would happen. That's why we prepared." I thought back to last week, when Richard had called William to the house for what his sons believed was a routine document review. Richard had been getting weaker from the cancer, but his mind remained sharp as a blade. We'd sat in his study, the same study where Christopher and Daniel had been counting down days, occasionally asking about paperwork with barely concealed anticipation. "I want to record it," Richard had insisted, his voice raspy but determined. "Every word. So there's no question about my mental state or my intentions." The video was 43 minutes long. Richard, propped up in his leather chair, systematically explaining why his sons would receive nothing but memories and a mirror to examine their own consciences. The will they thought existed, the one leaving everything to them, had been revoked 6 months ago after I finally shown Richard the recordings. Yes, recordings. I'd started documenting everything after Daniel jokingly pushed me down the stairs 2 years ago, claiming I tripped. The security cameras Richard didn't know I'd installed captured not just that incident but dozens of others. Christopher stealing from my purse, Daniel bringing women to the house while Richard was at chemotherapy, telling them it was practically his already, both of them discussing their plans to have me removed from the property the moment Richard died. "Margaret is my wife, my partner, and the only person who truly loved me, not my money," Richard said in the video, his eyes blazing with the fury I'd rarely seen him display toward his sons. "She never asked for anything. Not the cars, not the jewelry, not even to be added to the company board. She worked as a teacher our entire marriage, despite my wealth, because she wanted her own purpose." Through the car window, I watched the funeral proceedings through the church's open doors. Christopher was at the podium now, delivering what appeared to be a heartfelt eulogy. I could imagine the words, "devoted son, loving father, family legacy." All performance, no truth. "The house in Greenwich goes to Margaret," Richard's voice continued from the tablet William held. "The apartment in Manhattan, the cabin in Vermont, all to Margaret. The investment portfolio, the company's shares, the art collection, everything to my wife, who earned it through 20 years of patience, kindness, and unconditional love while being treated like an interloper in her own home." But Richard hadn't completely cut them off, and that's what made it brilliant. To Christopher and Daniel, he'd said, "I leave the exact amount of emotional support they gave Margaret. Nothing. The exact amount of respect, 0, and the exact amount of love they showed the woman who tried to be their mother, an empty account." The church bells began to ring, signaling the end of the service. The mourners would move to the cemetery now, where Richard would be buried in the family plot, the plot I'd maintained for 20 years, visiting his parents' graves when his sons couldn't be bothered. "They're coming," William noted, watching the church doors open fully. The funeral procession began forming, expensive cars lining up behind the hearse. I saw Christopher's wife, Patricia, already on her phone with what was undoubtedly a real estate agent. She'd been measuring rooms in my house last week when she thought I was at school. Daniel's girlfriend, a woman half his age named Brittany, was actually wearing designer sunglasses at a funeral, posing for selfies against the hearse. I stepped out of my car just as the procession was about to pass. Christopher saw me first, his eulogy red eyes narrowing with irritation. He whispered something to Daniel, who actually laughed, at his father's funeral. The procession moved slowly toward the cemetery section. I followed on foot, William beside me with his briefcase. Other mourners noticed me, some with sympathy, others with the gleeful anticipation of drama. Hartford society did love its scandals. At the graveside, I stood at the back while Christopher and Daniel positioned themselves at the front, the grieving sons accepting condolences with practiced sorrow. The minister spoke about family, about legacy, about love transcending death. Every word felt like mockery given what had transpired. As Richard's casket was lowered into the ground, Christopher stepped forward with a small speech. "My father was everything to us," he said, his voice carrying across the silent cemetery. "He built an empire from nothing, and we promised to continue his legacy." That's when I spoke up. "Which legacy would that be, Christopher? The one where he loved his wife, or the one where his sons conspired against her?" Every head turned. Christopher's face went from performance grief to genuine shock. "You shouldn't be here. This is a private." "This is my husband's funeral," I said, walking forward through the crowd that parted like the Red Sea. "The husband whose sons locked me out of the church. The husband who died holding my hand while you were at a casino in Foxwoods." "You gold digging," Daniel started, but William stepped forward. "Mr. Winters, I'd be very careful about defamation at your father's graveside," William said smoothly, "especially given what's about to happen." "Who the hell are you?" Christopher demanded. "William Brennan, senior partner at Brennan, Frost and Associates. Your father's attorney for the past 30 years. He pulled out the tablet. Your father left specific instructions for the reading of his will to take place immediately following his burial." Patricia actually gasped. "Here. Now." His exact words were, William read from his notes, "Let them celebrate my death where they buried my life, in public view, with nowhere to hide." Daniel laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous. We all know what the will says. Dad told us years ago. Everything's split between his sons, as it should be." "That will was revoked 6 months ago," William announced, loud enough for all 50 attendees to hear. "Would you like me to read the new one, or would you prefer to watch your father explain it himself?" The blood drained from both brothers' faces. "What video?" Christopher managed. William turned the tablet toward the crowd and pressed play. Richard appeared on the screen, sitting in his study, wearing the Yale sweater I'd given him last Christmas. His voice, though weakened by illness, carried clearly across the cemetery. "If you're watching this, it means my sons have likely done exactly what I expected. They've barred Margaret from my funeral and are standing at my grave, counting their inheritance." Someone in the crowd gasped. Others pulled out their phones, recording this unprecedented scene. Richard continued, "Christopher, Daniel, you're watching this surrounded by people you've lied to about Margaret. You've called her a gold digger, a temporary inconvenience, someone you've removed from our lives the moment I died. What you never knew was that I heard every word. The baby monitor you never noticed in the library transmitted directly to my office. I heard you planning to contest any will that included her. I heard you laughing about pushing her down the stairs." Daniel's girlfriend started backing away from him. Patricia was sheet white, her phone hanging limply in her hand. "But the worst part," Richard's voice grew stronger with anger, "was when you told Margaret, the day I was diagnosed, that you were counting down the days, that you'd already picked out which of her things you'd throw away first. You made my wife cry in her own home while I was dying upstairs." The crowd was dead silent except for the wind through the bare trees and Richard's recorded voice. "So here is my final will and testament. To my wife, Margaret Hayes Winters, I leave everything. Every penny, every property, every possession. She alone showed me what love means, not love for money or status, but love that sits beside a dying man for 16 hours straight, reading him Yeats because she knows it's his favorite." Christopher lunged toward William, but 2 of the funeral home staff members restrained him. "This is fraud. She manipulated him. He wasn't in his right mind." "Would you like to see the psychiatric evaluation from last week?" William asked calmly. "Or the 3 witnesses who aren't family members? Or perhaps the notarized documents signed in the presence of a judge?" The video continued. "To Christopher and Daniel, I leave my complete disappointment. You had 20 years to accept a woman who tried to love you despite your cruelty. She attended every graduation, every birthday, every achievement, while you couldn't even pronounce her name correctly at family dinners, calling her Margaret like she was the help instead of Mom, or even Maggie. I stood perfectly still, snow gathering on my black coat, as Richard delivered his final blow. The trust funds you've been living on for the past decade, they were actually funded by Margaret's inheritance from her mother. Money she put into the family accounts because she believed in us as a family. Every vacation you took, every car you drove, every investment in your failed businesses came from the woman you called a gold digger. This was news even to me. I'd never tracked where my mother's money went after I added it to our joint accounts. Richard had, apparently. Daniel fell to his knees beside the grave. Whether from shock or performance, I couldn't tell. Christopher was screaming at William about lawsuits, about mental capacity, about undue influence. The crowd was dispersing, phones out, the scandal already spreading through Hartford's elite network. "There's more," William said quietly, though his voice carried. "Your father also discovered the embezzlement." Both brothers froze. $500,000 siphoned from the company over 3 years. He has all the documentation. You have two choices: accept the will gracefully and walk away, or contest it and face criminal charges. Patricia grabbed Christopher's arm. "We're leaving. Now." Daniel's girlfriend was already in her car, engine running. As the brothers were led away by their partners, the cemetery grew quiet. Only William and I remained at Richard's grave, the fresh earth dark against the snow. "He wanted me to give you this," William said, handing me a letter with my name and Richard's shaking handwriting. I opened it slowly, my hands trembling. "My dearest Maggie, if you're reading this, then they've shown you exactly who they are, and you've shown them exactly who you've always been. A lady with more grace than they deserved. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better. I'm sorry I let my guilt over their mother's death blind me to their cruelty toward you. You gave me 20 years of happiness I didn't deserve after failing as a father. You loved boys who rejected you with a patience I could never understand. You stayed when anyone else would have left. The money means nothing compared to what you gave me. Use it to live the life you sacrificed for us. Travel to those places you marked in your atlas. Open that school for underprivileged children you've dreamed about. Be free of the winter's name if you choose. You've earned your wings. All my love, Richard." P.S. I had the locks changed on all the properties yesterday. The new keys are in William's briefcase. Christopher and Daniel's belongings will be delivered to their current addresses tomorrow. I laughed through my tears, a sudden surprise sound in the quiet cemetery. Even dying, Richard had thought of everything. "There's one more thing," William said, pulling out his phone. "Christopher and Daniel are at the house right now, trying to get in. Would you like to see the security footage?" On a screen, I watched my stepsons frantically trying their keys, then attempting to break in through windows, all while a police car pulled up behind them. Richard had apparently called in a trespassing alert to activate upon his death. "Mrs. Winters," William asked gently, "what would you like to do now?" I looked at Richard's grave, covered with roses from his own garden, then at the cathedral in the distance where I'd been denied entry. 20 years of rejection, of cruelty, of being treated as less than family. And through it all, Richard had been watching, documenting, planning this moment. "I want to go home," I said simply. "To my home. And tomorrow, I want to start the Margaret Hayes Foundation for Blended Families. No step-parent should ever stand locked out of their own family." As we walked back to the car, my phone buzzed with messages. The video had already gone viral. Billionaire's sons exposed at funeral was trending. Christopher and Daniel would spend the rest of their lives known as the sons who locked their stepmother out of their father's funeral, only to lose everything to the woman they'd rejected. But I didn't care about their humiliation. I cared that Richard had seen me, really seen me, and valued what I'd brought to his life. The money was just numbers in an account. The real inheritance was knowing that love, patient, kind, steadfast love, had won in the end. The cathedral bells rang again as we drove away, this time sounding less like an ending and more like a beginning. Behind us, Richard rested in peace, having delivered the justice he couldn't in life, and ahead of me lay a future where I was no longer anyone's stepmother, no longer fighting for acceptance. I was simply Margaret, finally free, finally valued, finally home. The green light on my webcam blinked to life as I joined the Zoom call. Third round interview with Google. Senior software engineer position. 6 figures. The job that would finally get me out of my parents' house and away from their suffocating control. "Good morning, Zara." The interviewer's smile was warm and genuine. "I'm David Park, engineering manager for the cloud platform team. Ready to dive in?" "Absolutely," I said, forcing my hands to stop shaking. "Thank you so much for..." The door behind me burst open. My stomach plummeted as my mother's voice rang out, pitched loud enough for the camera to catch every word. "Is this the GOGLE person? I need to speak with them right now." "Mom, no." I spun in my chair, but she was already pushing into frame, Dad right behind her. "You must stop this interview immediately," Mom announced to my screen. "She's too mentally ill to work." She can't handle a job like this. David's expression shifted from confusion to concern. I'm sorry, who are you? Her parents. Her caregivers. Dad emphasized, leaning into view. We keep her medicated for everyone's safety. She's not stable enough for employment, especially not at a big company. Get out, I hissed, trying to push them away. This is illegal. You can't. She has bipolar disorder. Mom spoke over me, enunciating each word like a verdict. Severe type. She hears voices. She's violent. Last month she tried to burn the house down. That's not true. My voice cracked. None of that is true. See how agitated she gets? Dad gestured at me like I was an exhibit. This is exactly what we mean. She can't handle stress. What happens when she snaps at your office? When she has an episode. We're trying to protect you from a lawsuit. I lunged for my laptop to end the call, but Mom grabbed my wrist. Hard. The same grip she'd used since I was 12, whenever I tried to speak up for myself. She's off her medication right now, she continued to David, who sat frozen on screen. Refuses to take it, says we're controlling her. Classic paranoid delusion. I'm not on medication because I'm not mentally ill. The words ripped from my throat. Denial is part of her condition, Dad said sagely. We've dealt with this for years. The delusions, the violence, the compulsive lying. Did she tell you she graduated from Stanford? She didn't. Did she claim she worked at Microsoft? Also a lie. Her resume is pure fantasy. David cleared his throat. Mr. and Mrs. Okafor. We're just trying to save your company from making a terrible mistake. Imagine when she has a breakdown in your office. Imagine the liability. I see. David's voice was carefully neutral, and you felt it necessary to interrupt this interview to share this information. Someone had to. Mom's grip on my wrist tightened. She's been applying to jobs secretly. We've had to call several companies to warn them. It's our responsibility as her caregivers. Your responsibility, David repeated slowly. Tell me, do you have medical power of attorney over Zara? Both my parents blinked. What? Legal documentation, stating that Zara is mentally incompetent and you have authority to make decisions for her. Well, no, Dad admitted. But as her parents, she appears to be an adult. Living in your home, but legally an adult. Correct? She's 27, Mom said, like it was shameful. Still living at home because she can't take care of herself. Because you won't let me leave. I finally wrenched free from Mom's grip. You hide my documents. You track my phone. You sabotage every. See? Mom turned back to the camera. The paranoia. We don't hide anything. She loses things because of her condition. Mrs. Okafor, David's voice cut through her performance. I need to inform you that this interview is being recorded. It's Google policy for all final round interviews. Everything you've just said is on record. The color drained from Mom's face. Additionally, he continued, interfering with someone's employment opportunities through false statements could be considered defamation, especially if that person has documented proof that contradicts your claims. We're not lying, Dad blustered. She's sick. Tell him about the medication, Zara. Tell him about Dr. Hoffman. Dr. Hoffman hasn't been my doctor for 15 years, I said quietly. Not since he lost his license for over-medicating teenage patients. Remember? You kept taking me to him anyway. Paid cash, so there'd be no insurance trail. You needed those medications. I was 12. I was sad because Grandma died. That's not bipolar disorder. That's grief. Mr. Park, Mom pivoted back to the screen, desperation creeping into her voice. You don't understand what we deal with. The calls we get. The complaints. Just last week. What calls? I interrupted. What complaints? Name one. Your boss at the library said that I was Employee of the Month 4 times. I pulled up the certificates on my phone, holding them to the camera. That I reorganized their entire digital system. That I trained 3 new employees. What exactly did she complain about? Silence. David leaned forward slightly. Zara, do you have your Stanford transcripts available? Right here. I had everything ready, knowing I'd need proof. I screen shared my official transcript. Summa cum laude. Dean's list every semester. And here's my Microsoft verification letter. 2 years as a junior developer. Left for a startup that got acquired by Amazon. Here's that paperwork too. Those could be forged, Dad said weakly. They're linked directly from the official websites, David noted. I can see the URLs. Ms. Okafor, what medications are you currently taking? None, I said firmly. I take vitamin D and occasionally melatonin for sleep. That's it. I can provide a recent medical evaluation if needed. She's lying, Mom insisted. Check her room. Pills everywhere. The only pills in my room are aspirin and vitamins. You're welcome to verify that. In fact, I stood up, laptop in hand. Let's check right now. I walked to my dresser, streaming everything, and opened my pill organizer. 7 compartments, clearly labeled. Vitamins, calcium, iron. This proves nothing, Dad said. She hides the real medications. Where? You search my room weekly. You go through my trash. You read my journals. Where exactly am I hiding these medications? David's expression had shifted from concern to something else. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. Ms. Okafor, he said carefully, have you ever been convicted of a crime? No. Ever been hospitalized for mental health reasons? No. Well, yes, when I was 12. For 2 weeks, after my parents told doctors I was suicidal. I wasn't. I was keeping a journal about feeling sad, and they said that was suicidal ideation. Have you ever threatened anyone at work? Never. Had any performance issues, conflicts with colleagues? No, I can provide references from every position. She's very good at hiding it. Mom jumped in. That's part of the illness. She seems normal, but... Mrs. Okafor. David's voice was sharp now. I've interviewed hundreds of candidates. I've also dealt with individuals who have various mental health conditions. What I'm seeing here isn't someone in psychological distress. What I'm seeing is someone whose parents are actively sabotaging their career. How dare you? I dare because it's true, and it's recorded. Every word. Every accusation. Every lie. We're not lying, Dad shouted. She's sick. She needs help. We're protecting her. From a 6-figure job? David asked mildly. From independence? From a life outside your control? You don't know her like we do. Mom's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You don't know what she's capable of. What am I capable of, Mom? I turned to face her directly. Tell him what terrible thing I've done. She glared at me. The fire. You mean when I lit a candle for Diwali in my own room, that you claimed was arson? The violence. When I locked my door to stop you from reading my diary, and you called the police saying I was barricaded and dangerous. The lying. About what? Name one lie. One single thing I've lied about. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Dad stepped forward. We're your parents. We know what's best for you. No, I said quietly, you know what's best for you. Keeping me here. Keeping me small. Keeping me dependent. Because if I leave, who's going to clean your house? Who's going to cook your meals? Who's going to be your retirement plan? That's the illness talking, Mom said, but her voice wavered. Is it? Or is it the truth you don't want to hear? David cleared his throat. I think I've seen enough. Ms. Okafor, are you in a safe situation? Do you need resources? The word stuck. Was I safe? I'd lived like this so long, I didn't even know anymore. We would never hurt her, Dad said indignantly. Physical violence isn't the only kind of harm, David replied. Ms. Okafor, Google has partnerships with several organizations that help people in controlling family situations. I can send you information after this call. You're overstepping, Mom hissed. This is family business. You made it my business when you crashed this interview. He turned back to me. Zara, I'm going to end the formal interview here, but I want you to know something. Your technical assessment was flawless. Your system design was innovative. Your behavioral interviews showed leadership, empathy, and resilience. Especially resilience. Tears burned my eyes. Thank you. We'll be in touch within 48 hours with next steps. And Zara? That door is still open. The call ended. Silence filled my room like water. Then Mom laughed, sharp and bitter. Well, have that then. No way they'll hire you now. Not after seeing how unstable our family is. Unstable, I repeated. Our family is unstable. Not me, our family. Don't twist my words. I'm not twisting anything. You just told a Google hiring manager that I'm dangerously mentally ill. You have no proof, no documentation, no evidence, just your word against mine. And it's all recorded. So what? Dad scoffed. You think I'll hire you after this circus? Maybe, maybe not, but at least now there's evidence. Legal evidence of what you do, of how you lie, of how you've sabotaged every opportunity I've ever had. We're trying to protect you. From what? I screamed, 15 years of frustration erupting. From success? From independence? From a life that doesn't revolve around you? From yourself, Mom said coldly. You're nothing without us. You know that. Who else would tolerate you? Who else would care for you? I guess we'll find out. I started packing. Not much. They'd know if I took too much. Just essentials. Documents I'd hidden in a tampon box because they'd never look there. The emergency cash I'd saved from online tutoring they didn't know about. My laptop. Where do you think you're going? Dad blocked my door. Out. With what money? What car? What plan? I'll figure it out. You'll be back by dinner, Mom said confidently. You always come back. Remember when you tried to leave for college? For that internship? For that apartment? You came crawling back every time. Because you sabotaged me every time. Called my landlords. Told my roommates I was dangerous. Froze my bank accounts. But this time is different. Why? Because this time I have proof. This time, a Fortune 500 company has a recording of you admitting to sabotaging my employment. This time, if you try to stop me, I'll send that recording to every family member, every friend, every person at your church. I'll post it online. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you are. Dad stepped aside. As I passed, he grabbed my arm. Not hard, just enough to remind me he could. You'll regret this, he said quietly, when you're alone, when you fail, when you realize we were right all along. Maybe, I said, but at least it'll be my failure, my choice, my life. I walked out with one backpack and 15 years of suppressed dreams. My friend Amira picked me up 2 blocks away. I texted her from the bathroom during the interview disaster. She'd been waiting ever since. Your parents are psychos, she said as I collapsed into her car. Full psychos. I know. What's the plan? I don't know. Find a cheap motel. Apply for more jobs. Hope Google doesn't blacklist me. Try to survive. Motel? She snorted. You're staying with me. Non-negotiable. Amira. Non-negotiable. My couch has your name on it until you get your Google offer. You think they'll still hire me after that? She grinned. Babe, are you kidding? You just showed them you can handle the worst possible stress with grace. You fact-checked your abusers in real time. You stayed professional while your parents tried to destroy your life on camera. If that's not Google material, I don't know what is. My phone buzzed. Email from David Park. Dear Zara, I wanted to reach out immediately following our interrupted interview. First, I want to assure you that your parents' interruption has no bearing on our assessment of your candidacy. If anything, your composure under such circumstances only reinforces our impression of your capabilities. I'm expediting your case to our urgent hiring committee. Additionally, I'm attaching resources for individuals dealing with family control and coercive situations. Google takes employee safety seriously, and that includes prospective employees. We'll be in touch within 24 hours instead of the standard 48. Also, off the record, your parents' claims were clearly fabricated. Anyone who's actually worked with individuals with mental health conditions would recognize the difference between genuine symptoms and parental manipulation. I'm sorry you've endured this. Best, David. I read it 3 times before it sank in. Well, Amira demanded. They're expediting my case. To urgent hiring. She whooped so loud I jumped. I told you. Google knows talent when they see it, and toxic parents when they crash interviews. My phone rang. Mom. I declined and blocked the number. Then Dad. Block. The house line. Block. For the first time in 15 years, I wouldn't be taking their calls. Wouldn't be explaining myself. Wouldn't be apologizing for existing. 22 hours later, the offer came through. Senior software engineer. 180K base, plus stock, plus signing bonus. Enough to live alone. Enough to get therapy. Enough to build the life they tried to steal. I accepted immediately. The first person I told was David Park, who responded with a smiley face emoji and welcome to the team. Can't wait to work with someone who can handle any situation. The second was Amira, who screamed and cried and immediately started looking up apartments in your Google's campus. I didn't tell my parents. They'd find out eventually, probably when they tried to claim me on their taxes and discovered I'd filed independently, or when they called Google to warn them again and learned I was already thriving there. But that's future Zara's problem. Present Zara is too busy living her allegedly impossible life. Turns out I'm perfectly capable of working, succeeding, and existing without their control. Who would have thought? Everyone except them, apparently. Their loss, my freedom. My life finally beginning at 27. Better late than never. It was an accident, Dad insisted as I sobbed. But when the waste management company pulled their truck's GAPES data, it showed my stepmother make 3 trips to different dumpsters. The officer's next words made her collapse. We also found this in her car, Officer Martinez said, holding up an evidence bag containing my mother's sapphire ring, the one that was supposed to be mixed with her ashes, along with detailed internet searches about how to destroy human remains and forging cremation documents. Ma'am, this wasn't just desecration. This was an elaborate crime. My name is Amber, and 48 hours ago, I thought I'd lost the last physical remnant of my mother forever. What I discovered instead was a web of lies so twisted that even now, sitting in this police station, I can barely comprehend its scope. It started 3 days ago when I came home from my business trip early. I'd been in Seattle closing a major deal, but something, call it intuition, made me catch an earlier flight. Maybe it was because the next day was Mom's birthday. She would have been 58. I let myself into Dad's house quietly, not wanting to wake anyone at 6 a.m. The first thing I noticed was that Mom's urn wasn't on the mantel where it had sat for the past 3 years. My heart dropped. Dad? I called out, trying to stay calm. Where's Mom? My stepmother Carolyn appeared at the top of the stairs in her silk robe, her face a mask of false concern. Oh, Amber, you're back early. Your father's at his morning golf game. Where's Mom's urn, Carolyn? Something flickered across her face. Was it panic? Before she composed herself. Oh, honey, there was an accident. I was deep cleaning yesterday and knocked it over. The urn broke and the ashes, they went everywhere. I had to vacuum them up. You vacuumed my mother? My voice came out as a shriek. I tried to save them, but they were mixed with dust and glass. I'm so sorry. I was going to tell you when you got back. Where are they now? I demanded, already knowing the answer I dreaded. I threw the vacuum bag away. The garbage truck came this morning. I sank to my knees on the hardwood floor. Mom's ashes, the last physical piece of her, were in a landfill somewhere. Gone forever because Carolyn couldn't be bothered to be careful. That's when Dad walked in, still in his golf clothes. What's all the shouting about? Through my tears, I explained. Dad's face went through several expressions before settling on defensive irritation. It was an accident, he insisted as I sobbed. Carolyn feels terrible about it. You need to move on already, Amber. Your mother's been gone for 3 years. It's not healthy to cling to ashes. Not healthy. I stood up, rage replacing grief. Those ashes were all I had left. They were just ashes, Dad said coldly. Your mother is gone. Carolyn is my wife now. This is her home too. I looked between them, Dad in his expensive golf attire, Carolyn with her perfectly manicured nails and fake sympathy. Something wasn't right. Show me the broken urn, I said suddenly. Carolyn blinked. What? The urn, you said it broke. Where are the pieces? I threw them away too. They were sharp. In the same bag as the ashes. Yes. I pulled out my phone. What time did the garbage truck come? Around 5:30, Carolyn said quickly, too quickly. Funny. Mrs. Henderson next door texted me at 7 asking if everything was okay because she saw you making multiple trips to your car with bags at 3 a.m. Carolyn's face went white. Dad stepped forward. Now hold on, Amber. You're upset, but don't start making accusations. I'm calling the police, I said, already dialing. For an accident? Dad grabbed for my phone, but I stepped back. For theft and desecration of human remains. Because this wasn't an accident. The first officer to arrive was sympathetic but skeptical until I showed him the text from Mrs. Henderson. Then I remembered something. The urn was distinctive. I told him. Hand-blown glass with gold leaf. If it broke, there would be very specific debris. Can you check if the garbage was really picked up? Officer Martinez made some calls. 20 minutes later, he had answers that changed everything. The garbage truck hasn't been through this neighborhood yet today. It's scheduled for this afternoon. Your stepmother lied about that. Carolyn tried to maintain her story. I must have been confused about the day. Ma'am, Officer Martinez interrupted. We need to check your vehicle. In Carolyn's BMW, they found damning evidence. 3 garbage bags in the trunk, GPS history showing trips to 3 different commercial dumpsters across town at 3:17 a.m., 3:42 a.m., and 4:05 a.m. But the bags didn't contain Mom's ashes. They contained clothes. Mom's clothes that I'd kept in storage boxes in the basement, photo albums, her jewelry, years of memories Carolyn had decided to erase. Where are the ashes? I demanded. Carolyn's lawyer mask finally cracked. I don't know what you're talking about. We have your GPS data, Officer Martinez said. We know you made 3 trips. We can check every dumpster. Why don't you save us all time? That's when they found Mom's ring in the glove compartment. The sapphire ring that was supposed to be with her ashes, that Dad had specifically requested be cremated with her. The ring Carolyn was apparently planning to keep. This changes things, Officer Martinez said. This is theft, and depending on what happened to those ashes, potentially a felony. The investigation that followed revealed the horrifying truth. Security footage from the first dumpster showed Carolyn throwing in bags of Mom's belongings. The second dumpster behind a medical building revealed something worse. She'd thrown the ashes in a medical waste container, knowing they'd be incinerated again, completely destroyed. But it was the third location that exposed the full scope of her plan. The GPS led to a storage unit across town. Inside, police found boxes of Mom's things that Carolyn had been slowly stealing from our family storage, valuable items she was apparently planning to sell. They also found something that made my blood run cold. A folder full of documents. Forged papers claiming Mom had left certain items to Carolyn. A fake will. Medical directives with forged signatures. And most disturbing, applications for death certificates with different dates, as if she'd been practicing. Your stepmother has been planning this for months, Detective Janet Sullivan explained after taking over the case. These documents, she wasn't just trying to get rid of your mother's ashes. She was trying to rewrite history, make it seem like she had claims to your mother's estate. But Mom's estate was settled 3 years ago, I said, confused. You mentioned your mother had a life insurance policy that pays out in installments? My heart sank. Yes. I receive annual payments for the next 7 years. These documents would have given Carolyn claim to those payments. She was building a case that your mother considered her a daughter, left her things. With the physical evidence destroyed, ashes, clothes, photos, it would be harder to dispute. I thought about all the times Carolyn had asked about Mom's insurance, feigning casual interest. The way she'd volunteered to help organize family photos, only for boxes to go missing. Her sudden interest in Mom's jewelry that she claimed Dad had promised her. She's been systematically erasing my mother, I whispered. Detective Sullivan nodded grimly, while preparing to steal her identity and assets. When they arrested Carolyn, she tried one last manipulation. Harold, she cried to my father. Tell them how Amber's been unstable since her mother died. How she's obsessed, living in the past. Dad stood there, finally seeing the woman he'd marry for who she really was. The evidence was overwhelming. The GPS data, the security footage, the forged documents, the stolen property. You told me the ashes were an accident, he said slowly. You cried about how bad you felt. I was protecting you. Carolyn screamed as they cuffed her. From her, she pointed at me. She's poisoned you against me from the start. Made you feel guilty about moving on. You threw my wife's ashes in medical waste, Dad said, his voice hollow. You stole her things. You tried to steal from my daughter. The full truth came out during the investigation. Carolyn had a history, 2 previous marriages where family heirlooms went missing, where important documents were accidentally destroyed. She was a professional predator who targeted widowers, gradually erasing the former wives and enriching herself. She'd studied our family for months before meeting Dad at his grief support group. She knew about Mom's insurance, about the family property Mom had left me, about the valuable jewelry Mom had inherited from her grandmother. Every sympathetic conversation, every offer to help organize, every gentle suggestion that I was too attached to Mom's things, all calculated. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She underestimated the bonds between neighbors. Mrs. Henderson, who'd known Mom for 20 years, who'd held me when I cried at the funeral, who still brought flowers to Mom's grave every month, she'd been watching. When she saw Carolyn sneaking around at 3 a.m., she knew something was wrong. "Your mother was my dear friend," Mrs. Henderson told me later. "When I saw that woman loading bags in the dark, I knew. I just knew." The ashes were recovered from the medical waste facility just hours before they would have been destroyed forever. Mom's urn hadn't been broken. Carolyn had hidden it in the storage unit, probably planning to sell it. We had a small ceremony to return Mom's ashes to their rightful place, this time in a locked cabinet in my home. Carolyn was charged with grand theft, forgery, fraud, and desecration of human remains. The prosecutor, reviewing her history, pushed for the maximum sentence. This wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of anger, she argued. This was a calculated campaign to erase one woman's existence while stealing her legacy. During the trial, more victims came forward. The widow of her first husband testified about missing war medals that mysteriously appeared in online auctions. The daughter of her second husband spoke about family photos that vanished, inheritance documents that were lost. "She doesn't just steal things," one victim said. "She steals memories, histories, connections. She tries to make it like the first wife never existed." Carolyn was sentenced to 12 years. As they led her away, she maintained her innocence, claiming we'd all conspired against her because we couldn't accept Dad moving on. "Dad and I have a long road ahead. He's in therapy, processing how he enabled Carolyn's abuse, how his grief made him vulnerable to her manipulation. He's asked for my forgiveness more times than I can count. I wanted so badly to believe I could be happy again," he told me. "I let that blind me to what she was doing to you, to your mother's memory. Mom would want you to be happy," I assured him. "Just with someone who doesn't try to erase her existence." We've started a new tradition. Every year on Mom's birthday, we go through her photos together, tell stories, remember. The things Carolyn tried to destroy, we celebrate. The memories she tried to steal, we share. I keep Mom's urn in my home now, in a place of honor, but behind locked glass. Her sapphire ring sits beside it, catching the light. Sometimes I talk to her, tell her about the woman who tried to make her disappear. "She didn't know you, Mom," I whisper. "She didn't know that you're not just in those ashes or those things. You're in my laugh, in my stubborn streak, in the way I make your famous lasagna. You're in every sunrise I watch because you taught me to appreciate beauty." She could throw away ashes, but she could never throw away you. The GPS data that exposed Carolyn's crime has been framed in my office, a strange memento, but a reminder that truth has a way of surfacing. 3 trips to 3 dumpsters, each one logged and tracked, each one a nail in her coffin. Technology caught her. Mrs. Henderson's vigilance exposed her, but it was love, my love for my mother, my refusal to let her be erased, that stopped her. Carolyn thought ashes were just dust, easily disposed of, quickly forgotten. She was wrong. Those ashes were my mother's final physical form, and protecting them was my final act of daughterly love. She's back where she belongs now, safe and honored, a testament to the truth that love is stronger than those who try to destroy it. Some things can't be thrown away, no matter how many dumpsters you visit at 3 a.m. Memory, love, truth, these endure, rising from whatever ashes remain. The birthday cake sat untouched on the kitchen counter, 17 candles slowly drowning in melted wax. You're not our real mom." Chloe screamed, her face twisted with the kind of rage only a 17-year-old could muster. "Stop pretending you care about my birthday." Her brother Tyler, 15 and already taller than me, crossed his arms and added his favorite line. "Dad only married you for your cooking anyway. Everyone knows it." I set down the spatula I'd been using to frost the homemade chocolate cake, Chloe's favorite, made from scratch like I'd done for every birthday for the past 10 years. My hands were steady, but inside, something finally snapped. Not broke, snapped, like a rubber band stretched too far for too long. "You're right," I said quietly. They both blinked, thrown by my agreement. Usually, I'd smile sadly and say something about loving them anyway, or remind them that family was more than blood. Not today. I'm not your real mom, I continued, wiping my hands on my apron. The one Chloe had given me for Christmas when she was 8, before she decided hating me was easier than loving me. And you know what? I'm tired of pretending that's my fault. I walked past them, up the stairs to the master bedroom I'd shared with their father, Marcus, for a decade. In the closet, behind my winter coats, was the suitcase I bought 6 months ago. The one I packed and unpacked a dozen times, always talking myself out of leaving. Not today. As I folded my clothes, the designer pieces mixed with the old Navy basics, because I'd never been flashy about money, I heard Marcus's car in the driveway. Early from work, as usual. The consulting firm he claimed to run had exactly one client. Me. Not that the kids knew that. Babe, he called up the stairs. Why is Chloe crying? I didn't answer, just kept packing. The sound of his footsteps on the stairs was familiar, heavy, tired, the walk of a man who'd given up on his dreams long before I met him. Sarah? He stood in the doorway, his face cycling through confusion to concern to the first flicker of panic. What are you doing? Leaving, I said, zipping the suitcase. Because of a teenage tantrum. Come on, she didn't mean it. You know how kids are. Yes, I said, pulling my laptop bag from under the bed. I know exactly how kids are. I've raised yours for 10 years while you played video games and pretended to have a business. His face flushed. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Let's talk about fair, Marcus. Is it fair that I've heard you're not my real mom 3,652 times? Yes, I counted. Is it fair that your children have spent a decade telling me you only married me for my cooking while you sat silent? Sarah, please. No, I held up my hand. I'm done. The divorce papers are on the kitchen counter, next to Chloe's birthday cake, the one she doesn't want because I'm not her real mom. I pulled a manila envelope from my bag and handed it to him. You might want to look at these before the kids see them, or don't. I honestly don't care anymore. His hands shook as he opened the envelope. I watched his face change as he read the first document, a bank statement from my business account. Novatech Solutions, the company I built from my garage while his children slept, now worth $18 million. This is yours, he whispered. Page 2, I said, pulling my suitcase off the bed. Page 2 was 10 years of expenses, private school tuition for both kids, $340,000. Medical bills including Tyler's surgery when he broke his leg skiing, $45,000. Close therapy after their mom died, $30,000. Summer camps, sports equipment, music lessons, tutors, clothes, food, everything. $1.2 million over 10 years. Page 3. His business account, total revenue over 10 years, $67,000. Total expenses, $71,000. Net profit, negative $4,000. He couldn't finish. Paying for everything. Yes. While you told your children I was a gold digger who trapped you. While you let them believe you were providing for them. While you sat in your office playing World of Warcraft and calling it client development. The sound of footsteps on the stairs. Chloe and Tyler appeared in the doorway, drawn by their father's raised voice. Dad? Tyler asked. What's wrong? Marcus looked at me, pleading. Don't do this, his eyes begged. Don't tell them. Your father has something to tell you, I said, moving past them with my suitcase. Sarah, Marcus called after me. I stopped at the top of the stairs. Oh, I almost forgot. Page 4. I heard the rustle of paper as he found it. The account I'd set up for each child the day I married their father. College funds I'd been feeding for 10 years, now worth $300,000 each. That's my wedding gift to them, I said without turning around. They can access it at 18. Or not. After all, I'm not their real mom. What is she talking about? Chloe demanded. Dad, what are those papers? I descended the stairs, my footsteps echoing in the house I had paid for, renovated, and filled with love that was never wanted. Behind me, I heard Marcus stammering, trying to explain. In the kitchen, I paused at the counter. The birthday cake still sat there, Happy 17th birthday, Chloe, written in perfect script. Next to it, the divorce papers I had drawn up 6 months ago, waiting for the courage to use them. My phone buzzed. A text from my business partner. The Tokyo deal closed. $2.3 million. Drinks to celebrate. Leaving now, I typed back. Make it champagne. The front door clicked shut behind me with a finality that felt like freedom. My phone lit up before I reached the car. Marcus, pleading. Chloe, suddenly apologetic. Tyler, confused and upset. I blocked them all. 10 years of being unappreciated was enough. The Hilton downtown had a suite available. I checked in, ordered room service, and sat on the bed in blessed silence. No teenagers shouting about how I'd failed them. No husband pretending to work while depending on my earnings. Just me, my laptop, and the business I built in the margins of a life spent supporting people who never truly saw me. An hour later, my lawyer called. Sarah, Marcus has been calling nonstop. Something about a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said, watching the city lights twinkle below. Just clarity. File the papers Monday. And the assets. I want the house. I paid for it. He can have his car and his so-called business. The kids' college funds stay untouched. Everything else is mine. That's generous. Considering California community property laws, you could take half of everything. He has nothing to take, I said with a quiet laugh. I've been the only income for 10 years. I just want out. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Sarah? A woman's voice. Older, composed. This is Janet Morrison, Chloe and Tyler's grandmother. Marcus's mother. We'd met exactly twice, at the wedding, and at a very tense Christmas 5 years ago. Hello, Janet. I'm at the house. The children are shaken. Marcus showed them some papers. The truth? I said. He showed them the truth. A long pause. I owe you an apology, she said. I told Marcus you were after his money when you married him. I thought, well, it doesn't matter now. Chloe told me you've been paying for everything, school, clothes, everything. It doesn't matter anymore. It does, she said firmly. I failed those children once when their mother died. I won't fail them again. What they did to you was wrong. What we all did was wrong. They're not my responsibility anymore. No, she agreed. They're not. But I'd like to ask, would you be willing to see them? Just once. They have something to say. Janet. I know you don't owe them anything. You've given enough. But they're 17 and 15, Sarah. They just discovered their entire reality was a lie. That their father wasn't who he claimed to be, and the woman they resented was the one holding it all together. I stared at my reflection in the hotel window. 35 years old. Successful. Free. I didn't need this. One meeting, I said. Tomorrow. Neutral place. 20 minutes. Thank you. We met at a Starbucks downtown. I arrived early, chose a quiet corner, and waited. Marcus wasn't with them, just Janet and the kids. Chloe's eyes were red from crying. Tyler looked smaller than I remembered. They sat across from me, and for a long moment, no one spoke. Dad lied, Tyler said finally, his voice unsteady. About everything. Yes, I replied simply. You pay for my surgery, he said. When I broke my leg, he said insurance covered it, but the papers say you paid cash. Over $40,000. Insurance would have covered a standard surgeon. I said. But I wanted you to have the best. Dr. Hendricks was the best in the state. Chloe still hadn't looked up. The therapist, she whispered. After Mom died, you found her? Dr. Walsh, yes. She specialized in grief therapy for children. I wanted you to have someone who could help. Dad said you were trying to replace her, Chloe said, barely audible. Said you wanted to erase her memory. I hung her picture in the hallway, I said gently. I made her buttermilk pancakes every Sunday because you said they reminded you of her. I kept every album, every piece of jewelry, every memory box in your room, just how you asked. Chloe finally met my eyes, tears spilling over. We were so cruel to you. Yes, I said. You were. I'm sorry, Tyler said. I'm really, really sorry. Language, Janet murmured gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. You know what the hardest part was? I asked. It wasn't the fake mom comments. It wasn't the constant reminders that I didn't belong. It was that I genuinely loved you both, and that love was used against me every single day. Can you forgive us? Chloe asked. I don't know, I answered honestly. Forgiveness isn't a switch, it's a journey. And right now, I'm still working through a lot of pain. Will you come back? Tyler asked. No, my voice was gentle, but there was no room for misunderstanding. I won't be coming back. Your father and I are divorcing. The house will be sold. You'll likely need to move. But the college funds I created for you will remain untouched. That's my final gift. What you do with your future is entirely up to you. I stood. Janet reached out, not to touch, just to gesture softly. Sarah, thank you. For 10 years of devotion. For loving them when they couldn't love you back. For being the mother they needed, even when they couldn't see it. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. I hate that you were right, Chloe said suddenly. That day you left, you said you weren't our real mom. I hate that we made that feel true. You didn't make it true, I said gently. Biology made it true, but you made it the only thing that mattered. I left them there, 3 generations trying to piece together what had gone so wrong. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Marcus initially tried to contest it, claiming I had hidden assets. But his attorney explained that assets from a business solely in my name were not hidden. They were mine legally and transparently, especially given the paper trail showing I'd pay every household bill for a decade. The house sold quickly. Marcus moved in with his mother. The kids stayed with him on weekends and with Janet during the week. She enrolled them in a good public school, not the elite academy I had paid for. I bought a condo in a city, walking distance from my office. Novatech was expanding. We opened branches in London and Singapore. I traveled, worked, and slowly remembered who I was before I became lost in the role of stepmother. The kids reached out, birthday cards, holiday emails, updates about their lives. I responded with kindness, but distance. The walls they had built didn't disappear just because they were finally aware of them. 2 years later, Chloe called. She had just turned 18 and was starting college. I wanted you to know, she said. I'm going to Stanford. Computer science. Congratulations, I said. That's a big accomplishment. I could only go because of you. The fund you set up. It was always meant for you. I'm learning to code, she added. I want to build something. Like you did. Something meaningful. That's not entirely accurate, I said. I didn't build from nothing. I built from pain, rejection, and a deep need to prove I mattered. That's not something I'd wish on anyone. I know, she whispered, but maybe I can build from understanding, from learning, from watching a woman who gave everything to children who didn't know how to receive it and still thrived. Maybe you can. I love you, she said. I know I can't expect you to say it back, but you were my mom in every way that counted, and I pushed you away. I loved you too, I said, past tense, because the girl I loved was 8 and gave me an apron for Christmas. I don't know who you are now, Chloe, and that's the part we can't undo. She was crying when we hung up. So was I. Tyler wrote me a letter on his 18th birthday, 4 pages of memories, gratitude, and apology. He said he was studying pre-med, partly inspired by my insistence on getting him the best care when he broke his leg. He wanted to be the doctor another child could depend on. I wrote back once, wishing you the best. Marcus tried to reconnect when Janet was diagnosed with cancer. Despite everything, I respected what she did at the end, and I quietly paid for her treatment. She lived 3 more years. At her funeral, I sat in the back, unnoticed by most, acknowledged only by a few. Chloe and Tyler found me outside after the service. Thank you, Tyler said. We know you paid for Grandma's treatment. How? The bills came to Dad's house by mistake. Your company's name was on them. We stood there awkwardly, 3 people who had once been a family, now just connected by history. We really let you down, Chloe said softly. We had someone who cared, and we just didn't know how to accept it. You were hurting, I said. And you were young. I can understand that. What I can't forgive is that your father let you live with lies that made your hurt easier, by putting it all on me. He knows, Tyler said. He lives with Janet's sister now. Drinks too much. Says losing you was the worst mistake of his life. No, I corrected. His worst mistake was having me and treating me like I was nothing. Losing me was just the inevitable consequence. They invited me to their graduations. Chloe from Stanford, Tyler from Johns Hopkins. I sent generous gifts, but didn't attend. Those milestones belonged to the parents who'd raised them. Me for 10 years, their father and grandmother for the rest. But I've been erased from the first part and excluded myself from the second. Nova Tech went public when I turned 40. My shares were worth $450 million. I celebrated alone in my office, looking at a photo Chloe had sent years ago. The three of us at Tyler's birthday, my arms around both kids, all of us smiling. Before they decided I was the enemy. Before I realized love wasn't enough. I donated $50 million to establish a foundation for step-parents. Resources, support groups, legal aid. No one should give everything to children who aren't theirs only to be reminded daily that they're not enough. Chloe works for Google now. She sends me updates on her life. Promotions, relationships, achievements. Tyler's in his residency at Boston Children's Hospital. He named me as his inspiration in his med school application essay. Not that I knew until his advisor told me at a conference. They're successful, well-adjusted adults. The therapy I paid for worked. The education I funded opened doors. The love I gave, even when thrown back in my face, created a foundation they built on. But they built it without me. Because that's the thing about being a step-parent, you can give everything and be left with nothing. You can love with your whole heart and be told that heart doesn't count. You can sacrifice your youth, your money, your dreams, and still be reminded that you're not real. I was real when I was writing checks. I was real when I was making breakfast. I was real when I was helping with homework. I was real when I was paying for everything. I just wasn't real when it mattered, in their hearts. And by the time they realized their mistake, I'd learned to be real for myself. Successful, wealthy, respected. Everything they said I'd never be because I was just the fake mom. Turns out, fake moms can build real empires, even if they build them alone. I found my mother's ashes in the garbage can while taking out the trash on a Tuesday morning. The beautiful mahogany urn my grandmother had chosen, the one that had sat on the mantelpiece for 5 years, was wedged between coffee grounds and yesterday's takeout containers like worthless refuse. My hands shook as I pulled it out, wiping away orange peels and soggy napkins from the brass nameplate that read Elena Rose Martinez, beloved mother and wife. The urn was still sealed, thank God, but seeing it treated like garbage felt like losing her all over again. "What are you doing out there, Catalina?" My stepmother Brenda's voice carried from the kitchen window, sharp and irritated as always. I walked back into the house holding the urn against my chest like I was protecting a child. Brenda stood at the kitchen island, perfectly made up at 7 a.m., sipping coffee from the mug that used to be my mother's favorite. "Why was this in the trash?" I asked quietly. Brenda didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. She shrugged like she'd thrown away an old magazine. "This house needs fresh energy. She's been dead 5 years. Get over it." The words hit me like a slap. I looked toward the living room where my father sat reading his newspaper, the same spot where he used to sit with my mother every morning, sharing coffee and quiet conversation. "Dad," I called out. He rustled his paper but didn't look up. "Your stepmother is trying to make this place feel more like home for our family." Our family, as if the 15 years my mother spent in this house, the garden she planted, the memories we made, the love that had filled every room, as if none of that counted as family. This was her home too, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Was," Brenda emphasized, taking another sip of coffee. Past tense. "I've been patient, but I can't live in a shrine forever." I threw out those hideous curtains she made too, and that ugly vase collection. This place needs to move into the present. I stared at her, this woman who had waltzed into our lives 2 years after Mom died, convinced she could erase my mother's existence with new throw pillows and her own family photos. She'd been chipping away at Mom's presence piece by piece, first the pictures, then the furniture, now this. "You threw out her vase collection." "Donated it," Brenda said with fake charity, "to Goodwill. Someone who actually appreciates vintage junk can enjoy it now." Those vases weren't junk. They were pieces my mother had collected from every place we'd ever traveled as a family. The blue one from our trip to Santa Fe when I was 10. The crystal one from our anniversary dinner when my parents celebrated 20 years together. The small ceramic one I'd made for her in pottery class when I was 12. I quietly picked up the urn and walked to my room, closing the door behind me. I sat on my bed, holding the container that held all that was left of the woman who used to braid my hair before school, who taught me to cook her grandmother's recipes, who stayed up all night when I had the flu. 5 years. It had been 5 years since the car accident that took her away from us. 5 years of Dad slowly forgetting who he used to be. 5 years of watching Brenda systematically erase every trace of the life we'd built together. But throwing away my mother's ashes, that wasn't redecorating. That was desecration. I opened my laptop and started making phone calls. The first call was to my Aunt Sophia, my mother's sister, who lived 3 states away but had always told me I could count on her for anything. She did what? Sophia's voice went deadly quiet when I told her about the ashes. Aunt Sophia, I need help. I can't stay here anymore, but I need to make sure this never happens to anyone else. Pack your things, mind ya, I'm driving down tonight. The second call was to my mother's best friend Carmen, who ran a grief counseling support group at the community center. Catalina, honey, what you're describing isn't just cruel, it's traumatic. Have you documented any of this? What do you mean? Photos, recordings, anything that shows the pattern of behavior. Because what Brenda is doing has a name. It's called disenfranchised grief, when someone's right to grieve is denied or minimized. And there are legal protections for that, especially when it comes to disposal of human remains. I spent the rest of the day quietly taking pictures. The empty spaces where Mom's things used to be. The mantelpiece where her urn had sat, now decorated with Brenda's tacky ceramic cats. The kitchen windowsill where Mom's herb garden had thrived, now empty because Brenda said plants were too much work. When Brenda went to her book club that evening, I went into her room and found garbage bags full of my mother's belongings that she hadn't bothered to donate yet. Photo albums, jewelry, the quilt my grandmother had made for my parents' wedding, all of it destined for the dump. I rescued what I could and loaded it into my car. Dad came home while I was carrying the last box. "What's all this?" he asked, looking confused. "Mom's things, the ones Brenda was throwing away." His face fell slightly, like he was remembering something he'd been trying to forget. "Catalina, we talked about this. Brenda is my wife now. She deserves to make this place her home." "And what about Mom? Doesn't she deserve to be remembered in the home she helped build?" "Your mother is gone, sweetheart. I miss her too, but we have to move forward." "Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting, Dad. It doesn't mean throwing away every sign that she existed." He was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want me to do? Brenda threatens to leave every time we argue about this. I can't lose another person I love." That's when I understood. Dad wasn't choosing Brenda over Mom's memory. He was choosing the illusion of safety over the risk of being alone again. He was so terrified of facing another loss that he'd rather let Brenda erase our past than risk her walking away. "Dad," I said gently, "if someone threatens to leave you for honoring your first wife's memory, maybe they're not the right person to spend your life with." But I could see in his eyes that he wasn't ready to hear that truth. Aunt Sophia arrived at midnight, and we loaded the rest of Mom's rescued belongings into her SUV. She took one look at the house, at the cold modern furniture that had replaced Mom's warm, cozy pieces, and shook her head. "Your mother would hate what this place has become," she said quietly. The next morning, Brenda discovered that her project of erasing my mother had hit a snag. "Where are all the boxes I put in the spare room?" she demanded at breakfast. "I took them," I said calmly, eating the eggs Dad had made, the same way Mom taught him when they were newlyweds. "Those things are cluttering up my house. I want them gone." "They're gone. I took them to someone who will actually appreciate them." Brenda's face turned red. "You had no right." "I had every right. Those were my mother's belongings, and I'm her next of kin." "Your father is her next of kin, and he agreed with my decision." I looked at Dad, who was studying his coffee like it contained the secrets of the universe. "Did you, Dad? Did you specifically agree to throw away Mom's ashes?" The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "I thought we were just talking about redecorating," he said finally. "Human remains aren't home decor, Dad." That afternoon, I met with Carmen and 2 other counselors from the grief support group. They'd agreed to help me with something I'd been planning since my phone calls yesterday. "Are you sure about this?" Carmen asked. "It's going to cause a lot of family drama." "Good," I said. "Some drama is necessary." We went to the house when I knew Brenda would be there alone. Dad was at work, just like every weekday afternoon when Brenda did most of her redecorating and purging. I knocked on the door with my witnesses behind me. "Catalina, what is this?" Brenda looked nervous seeing the group of professional-looking women on her doorstep. "This is an intervention," I said. For someone who doesn't understand the difference between redecorating and emotional abuse, Carmen stepped forward. Mrs. Brenda Martinez, I'm Carmen Rodriguez from the County Grief Counseling Center. We've received reports of concerning behavior regarding the disposal of human remains and personal effects belonging to a deceased family member. Brenda's face went white. I don't know what she told you, but may we come in? The third woman, Dr. Patricia Walsh, was a family therapist who specialized in blended family dynamics. We'd like to discuss some resources that might help your family navigate this difficult situation. For the next hour, they educated Brenda about grief, about the psychological impact of erasing a deceased parent's presence, about healthy ways to blend families without destroying existing bonds. Brenda tried to defend herself at first, claiming she was just trying to help the family move on. But when Dr. Walsh explained the long-term psychological damage that disenfranchised grief could cause, especially to young adults who were still processing their loss, Brenda began to understand the gravity of what she'd been doing. I didn't realize, she said finally, looking genuinely shaken. I thought I was helping. The road to trauma is paved with good intentions, Carmen said gently. But there are better ways to create new family traditions without destroying old ones. They left Brenda with reading materials, contact information for family counseling services, and a very clear understanding that throwing away human remains was not just cruel. It was potentially illegal depending on local laws. When Dad came home that night, he found Brenda in tears at the kitchen table, surrounded by pamphlets about grief counseling and healthy-to-family integration. What happened here? He asked. I think I've been hurting Catalina, Brenda said quietly, and hurting your memories of Elena. I didn't understand what I was doing. Dad sat down beside her, and for the first time in 2 years, they had a real conversation about how to honor the past while building a future together. A week later, I got a call from Dad. Catalina, would you come over for dinner on Sunday? Brenda wants to talk to you about something. I almost said no, but something in his voice made me curious. When I arrived, I found the living room transformed again. But this time, it was different. Mom's urn was back on the mantelpiece, surrounded by a few of her favorite photos. The ugly ceramic cats were gone, replaced by one of Mom's rescued vases holding fresh flowers. I went to Goodwill, Brenda said quietly when she saw me looking around. I bought back as many of your mother's things as I could find. The vases, some of the decorative pieces. I know it's not everything, but she gestured toward the mantelpiece. I realize this house doesn't need fresh energy. It needs balance. Your mother's love built something beautiful here. I want to add to that, not erase it. Dad wrapped his arm around my shoulders. We also signed up for family counseling. All 3 of us, if you're willing. I looked around the room, at the blend of old and new, at my mother's memory finally being honored alongside Brenda's presence, at my father looking more like himself than he had in years. I'm willing, I said. 6 months later, we were sitting around the same kitchen table. But everything was different. Brenda had learned to cook some of Mom's recipes with my help. Dad had started telling stories about Mom again, sharing memories instead of hiding from them. And I had learned that sometimes the worst betrayals can become the catalyst for the most important conversations. The urn never moved from the mantelpiece again. But around it, slowly and carefully, we built something new. A family that could honor the past while embracing the future. And every morning when Dad sat in his chair with his coffee, he would glance at Mom's photo and smile, just like he used to when she was sitting beside him. Some fresh energy, it turned out, comes not from erasing the past, but from learning to live with it beautifully.
You're not real family, Sophia, so stop pretending you belong here. My adoptive brother Marcus sneered, physically blocking the church entrance while mourners streamed past us. The same church where Grandpa Theodore had walked me down the aisle at my wedding. Because my adoptive father claimed he had a business emergency. But I could see him now in the 3rd pew, dabbing fake tears. The funeral program in Marcus's hand trembled slightly, and I wondered if he'd already seen the note tucked inside that would change everything. The reading of Theodore Morrison's last will and testament will commence immediately following the service. Please, I said quietly, aware of the eyes on us. I just want to say goodbye to Grandpa. He's not your grandpa. My adoptive sister Claire joined Marcus, her black designer dress pristine despite the morning rain. You were just a charity case Mom and Dad took in. Theodore had 5 biological grandchildren. We don't need you confusing things. Charity case. 25 years since the Morrison family had adopted me at age 7, and I was still the outsider. Still the girl they brought home from foster care for the tax benefits and the praise at church. The obituary lists 6 grandchildren. I pointed out, holding up my phone showing the funeral home's website. That was a mistake, Marcus said flatly. We already spoke to the director about correcting it. Now leave before you make a scene. Behind him, I could see the church filling with people who'd known me since I was 7. Mrs. Patterson, who'd taught me piano because the Morrisons wouldn't pay for lessons. Mr. Kumar from the library, where I'd hidden during family gatherings that got too crowded with me there. Coach Williams, who'd driven me to track meets when my adoptive parents were busy with their real kids' activities. I'll wait in the car, I said, my voice steady despite the burning in my chest. But I'm not leaving. Security will remove you if necessary, Claire threatened, already turning away. This day is hard enough without you trying to insert yourself where you don't belong. I walked back to my 10-year-old Honda, parked between their Mercedes and BMWs. 25 years of being grateful for scraps. 25 years of smiling when they introduced me as our adopted daughter, Sophia, while their biological children were simply our children. 25 years of pretending it didn't hurt when family Christmas cards somehow forgot to include my photo. But Grandpa Theodore had been different. I pulled out my phone and opened the live stream link the funeral home had sent to all family members. The irony wasn't lost on me. Excluded from the physical space, but watching through the same technology they'd used to crop me out of family photos for their social media. The service began, and I watched my adoptive parents, Richard and Patricia Morrison, take their seats in the front row. Their biological children, Marcus, Claire, and the twins, David and Daniel, flanked them like a protective wall. The 5th grandchild they'd mentioned must have been cousin Jeremy, who'd moved to Seattle years ago. Reverend Foster began speaking about Theodore Morrison, the man who'd built Morrison Construction from nothing, who'd donated millions to charity, who'd valued hard work and integrity above all else. The man who'd secretly paid for my college when Richard had declared they'd done enough by raising me. Theodore Morrison believed in choosing your family, Reverend Foster said, and I saw Patricia stiffen in her seat. He often said that blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Miss Sophia Chen. This is Martin Blackwood from Blackwood and Associates. Please call me immediately after the service. It's regarding Mr. Morrison's estate. I minimized the message and continued watching. Marcus was giving the eulogy now, talking about summer fishing trips and grandfather-grandson bonding moments. He failed to mention that I'd been the one who went fishing with Grandpa every Sunday for 15 years, after Marcus declared it boring and for old people. The service felt endless. Each speaker shared memories that carefully erased my existence. Patricia spoke about Theodore's love for his 5 grandchildren. Richard discussed continuing the Morrison legacy through blood and tradition. Claire read a poem about genetic bonds that transcended time. Finally, it ended. I watched the family file out, accepting condolences, planning the reception at the country club where I'd never been welcome as a member. My phone rang before they'd even left the church. Miss Chen. Martin Blackwood. I need you to come to my office immediately. Are you at the funeral? I'm in the parking lot, I admitted. There was a pause. They didn't let you in. Family only, I said, echoing Marcus's words. I see. His voice turned cold, professional. That makes what I'm about to tell you even more significant. Can you be at my office in 20 minutes? 1420 State Street, Suite 500. Mr. Blackwood, what's this about? Theodore Morrison changed his will 3 months ago. The family doesn't know yet. They believe the old will is still in effect. They're in for quite a surprise. My hands shook as I started the car. 3 months ago was when I'd graduated from medical school. Grandpa had been too sick to attend, but he'd called me that night. "I'm so proud of you, Sophie girl," he'd said, using the nickname only he was allowed to use. "You've become everything I hoped you would, despite them." Blackwood and Associates occupied the top floor of the newest office building downtown. Martin Blackwood himself met me at the elevator. A distinguished man in his 60s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Theodore spoke of you often," he said, leading me to a conference room. "He kept every article about your medical school achievements, every photo from your wedding, every letter you wrote him during your residency." "The family's going to be here soon for the reading," I said. "Should I wait somewhere else?" "You'll wait right here," Mr. Blackwood said firmly. "You're the primary beneficiary. They can wait in the lobby if they're uncomfortable." Primary beneficiary? The words didn't compute. He handed me a sealed envelope. "Theodore asked me to give you this before the others arrived." Inside, Grandpa's shaky handwriting filled a single page. "My Sophie girl, if you're reading this, then they've shown you who they really are one final time. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from their coldness while I was alive. Richard is my son, and I kept hoping he'd become the father you deserved. You're reading this because they excluded you from my funeral. I know they did because I know my son, and I know his wife's influence. But you should know that you're the only one who visited me every week in the nursing home. You're the only one who called just to talk, not to hint about inheritance. You're the only one who loved me for me, not for what I could give you. The others will be shocked by my will. Let them be. You've earned everything through love, while they assumed blood would be enough. All my love, Grandpa Theodore." I was crying when the conference room door burst open. Patricia entered first, her funeral makeup still perfect. "What is she doing here?" she demanded, then noticed my tears. "Oh please, don't play the grieving granddaughter now. You couldn't even be bothered to come to the service." "Mrs. Morrison," Mr. Blackwood said coolly, "Miss Chen was explicitly barred from attending. I have multiple witnesses who saw your son physically blocking her entry." "Because it was family only." "Then perhaps we should discuss what Theodore Morrison considered family." He gestured for everyone to sit. Richard, Patricia, Marcus, Claire, and the twins filed in, their faces shifting from grief to suspicion as they saw me at the table. "The last will and testament of Theodore Morrison, executed 3 months ago, supersedes all previous versions," Mr. Blackwood began. "3 months ago?" Richard interrupted. "He wasn't of sound mind 3 months ago. On the contrary, I have statements from 3 doctors confirming his mental capacity, as well as video documentation of the will signing." Theodore was quite specific about covering all bases. He continued reading the legal preamble, then reached the distributions. "To my son Richard Morrison, I leave the family Bible and my wedding ring, with the hope that he might someday understand that family is about more than blood." Richard's face darkened. "That's it." "To Patricia Morrison, my daughter-in-law, I leave my collection of family photographs, the ones that include all 6 of my grandchildren, not the edited versions she prefers to display." Patricia went pale. "To Marcus Morrison, I leave my fishing equipment and a reminder that the best catches come to those who show up." "This is wrong," Marcus said. "The company, the houses, the investments." "To Claire Morrison, I leave my library of first editions, with the hope she might read them and learn that cruelty dressed in designer clothing is still cruelty." Claire's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "To David and Daniel Morrison, I leave my vintage car collection, to be held in trust until they demonstrate 1 full year of employment anywhere other than their father's company." The twins exchanged panicked looks. Neither had worked a day in their lives. "To Jeremy Morrison, my nephew's son, I leave $100,000, and my sincere apologies for including him in my previous will simply to exclude Sophie." "Get to the real assets," Richard demanded. Mr. Blackwood smiled slightly. "The remainder of my estate, Morrison Construction, and all its holdings, the commercial real estate portfolio, the investment accounts, the 4 homes, and all other assets not specifically mentioned. I leave to my chosen granddaughter, Sophia Chen, who proved that family is defined by presence, not DNA. The explosion was immediate. "This is fraud," Richard roared. "She manipulated a sick old man." "I have security footage," Mr. Blackwood interrupted calmly, "of every visit to the nursing home for the past 2 years. Miss Chen visited 104 times. You, Mr. Morrison, visited twice, both times to discuss business matters." "We were busy running the company," Patricia shrieked. "The company that should be ours." "The company Theodore built while you spent its profits," Mr. Blackwood noted. He was quite aware of the 3 mortgages you've taken on your home, Richard, and the gambling debts, and Patricia's shopping addiction that required a second mortgage. I sat silent, stunned. Morrison Construction was worth at least $50 million. The real estate portfolio added another $30 million. The houses, the investments. It was more money than I'd ever dreamed of. As for manipulation, Mr. Blackwood continued, Theodore documented everything. Every Sunday dinner Miss Chen was excluded from. Every family vacation she wasn't invited on. Every graduation, birthday, and holiday where you pretended she didn't exist. He has recordings, Richard, of you telling him she was just the adopted one and didn't need to be included in the will. "She's not even a Morrison," Claire spat. "She kept her Chinese last name." "Because you all made it clear I was never really part of the family," I finally spoke. 25 years of being reminded I should be grateful for the bare minimum. 25 years of watching you take Grandpa's money while mocking him behind his back. You little. Marcus lunged toward me, but Mr. Blackwood's security guard stepped forward. "There's one more thing," Mr. Blackwood said. Theodore included a video message. The screen on the wall flickered to life. Grandpa appeared, sitting in his favorite chair in the nursing home, looking directly at the camera. "If you're watching this," he said, his voice strong despite his age, "then you've learned about my decision. Richard, you're my son, and I love you, but you've become someone I don't recognize. You taught your children that money matters more than kindness, that blood matters more than loyalty. Sophie came to me when she was 7 years old, a scared little girl who just wanted a family. You gave her a house but never a home. You gave her food but never belonging. You gave her your name on paper but never in your hearts. But she gave me something precious, unconditional love. She didn't love me for my money or my company. She loved me for my stories, my terrible jokes, and my burned pancakes on our Sunday mornings together. To those of you angry about my decision, ask yourselves this. When was the last time you called just to say hello? When did you ever visit without mentioning money? When did you include Sophie in anything without being forced? Sophie, my dear girl, I know you'll want to share with them because that's who you are. But please remember, they had 25 years to share with you and chose not to. Use this gift to build the life you deserve, surrounded by people who choose you. And to my family who thought blood was enough, it wasn't. Love is what makes a family. Sophie proved that every Sunday at dawn when she showed up to go fishing with an old man, while the rest of you slept off your country club parties. Be well, all of you. But be better. The screen went dark. The room sat in silence until Richard stood abruptly. We'll contest this. No court will uphold. Theodore anticipated that, Mr. Blackwood said. Any family member who contests the will forfeits their specific bequest and triggers the donation clause. Everything goes to the foster care foundation that brought Sophie to your family. They left then, one by one, their threats and curses echoing in the hallway. Only Patricia lingered at the door. He never loved you, she said quietly. We took you in for the tax break and the good publicity. You were supposed to be grateful and disappear. I know, I said simply. But Grandpa loved me, and that was enough. After they left, Mr. Blackwood handed me a set of keys. The house on Elmwood. Theodore wanted you to have it immediately. He said you'd understand why. I did. It was the house where he'd taught me to ride a bike after Richard said it wasn't worth the effort. where we'd built a treehouse when I wasn't invited to Claire's birthday party, where I'd hidden during the family reunion when they told everyone I was the help's daughter to avoid questions. There's also this, Mr. Blackwood added, handing me another envelope. The deed to the Morrison family plot at Riverside Cemetery. Theodore purchased a separate plot and asked to be buried there instead. He said he wanted to rest somewhere I'd always be welcome to visit. I finished, tears flowing freely now. That evening, I stood at Grandpa's real grave, a simple stone in a quiet corner of the cemetery, away from the Morrison family mausoleum. Fresh flowers surrounded it, and I recognized the handwriting on the cards. Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Kumar, Coach Williams, and dozens of others who'd seen how the Morrisons treated me over the years. "You did it, Grandpa," I whispered. "You gave me a real family after all." My phone buzzed with texts from my actual chosen family, my husband, my medical school friends, my colleagues at the children's hospital where I worked. People who'd chosen me not for what I could give them, but for who I was. Later, I drove past the Morrison house and saw moving trucks in the driveway. The mortgages Mr. Blackwood had mentioned must have been due. Part of me wanted to help, the part that had spent 25 years trying to earn their love. But Grandpa's words echoed in my mind. They had 25 years to share with you and chose not to. I drove home instead, to my real home, where I was not an afterthought or an obligation, but simply Suffy. Tomorrow, I'd meet with financial advisors and lawyers. Tomorrow, I'd figure out how to run a construction empire and manage millions I'd never expected to have. But tonight, I grieve the grandfather who'd chosen me when no one else would. The man who'd seen past DNA to find his truest grandchild. The one who'd given me the greatest gift, not money or companies, but the knowledge that I'd been genuinely, completely, unconditionally loved. And in the end, that inheritance was worth more than all the others combined.